What's going on, guys? It's your boy Noody. I know the new expansion is just around the corner. You know, we're going to be getting the new spears and stuff like that. But I thought leading up to the expansion, it'd be good to do another tier list video for 2024. And then look, if too much changes after the expansion, I'll make another one. I know you guys really like tier list videos and it, you know, helps you guys get some inspiration. So it's a quick and easy video for me to record. I figured why not? As a quick little disclaimer, I want to mention I'm doing this based off of the average player's experience. I'm not really taking into consideration exceptions, you know, players who play the worst builds and, you know, can compete with some of the best. I'm talking about the average player and what you're going to come across in World vs. World roaming. All right, let's kick this off. Oh, you know what? I'm actually going to add a new row before I do this. I think I'm going to add C because we're gonna try be pretty accurate here, and I want S tier to only be for the best of the best. All right, anyway, Chronomancer. I'm gonna put Chronomancer in the B tier. It's got some really big damage. If you play the power chrono build, maybe I'll have some clips I can put up on the screen. All in all, it's a very good build. However, it does have its weaknesses. It has some issues around sustain. The damage output is nuts. But typically speaking, if you match it up against some, you know, celestial builds, which unfortunately you're just going to come across in World vs. World, that's where for the average player, it's going to start being some tough work. Definitely a fun build to play around with though. Up next, we've got Renegade. This one's a bit of a tough one. You know what? I think this build played with Celestial definitely warrants it to be in the A tier. We've all come across them. The shortbow Celestial Renegades, they're extremely hard to kill. They've got a lot of sustain and they can actually put out some pretty solid damage. It's a bit of a slow burn build, but if you pair this build with the speed rune, I've found it's so hard to kill. I think A tier is definitely a good place for that one. Up next, we have Berserker. This one is a tough one, and I've always struggled placing this this build in the tier list. Last time, a lot of people didn't agree with where I put it, but Berserker definitely is a solid build. You've got the Gunflame meme build. You've got there's like a condition version of Berserker. I'm gonna have to put this in A tier. I think it's definitely got its place higher up there now in comparison to years before. If you give the average player the right build, you know, the Celestial Berserker and stuff like that, I think they're gonna get some work done with it. Oh, if it isn't my golden child, Daredevil. You know what, guys? I think it's going in the D tier. Very underpowered, not good enough. ANET, please give it some buffs. Obviously, I'm kidding. Fucking straight in the S tier, boys. Let's go. You may disagree. You may not think Daredevil is that strong. And I guess when you think about it, other than stealth and mobility, it doesn't output anything crazy. However, this build has been the most popular solo roaming build since Heart of Thorns released. It has always been up there as the most used build, and that's for a reason. It's very consistent. If you know how to play it, it's very good, and it just makes for a very good solo roaming experience. S tier. Also, I forgot to mention, we don't actually have any of the core classes here because let's be honest, out of all the classes, there is not a single core build that is the best, you know, for that particular class. It's always an elite specialization. Although there are some good core builds, I just figured that would be too much to add them in as well. Anyway, Hollowsmith. This one is a tough one for me. I'm not gonna lie. It's floating somewhere between A and B tier. I honestly, personally right now, think this is my favorite go-to NG build to play, which is a static discharge hollow. I think I'm just going to put this in A tier. It's got pretty solid damage output. It's got high mobility. It's got access to blocks, blast finishes. You've got mortar kit. There are some celestial builds that you can run on hollow. Not that I've really played with them personally, but I've seen some people play with them. Yeah, it's got to be an A tier for me. This is I'm realizing this is going to be really tough because I feel like A tier is going to be pretty stacked. But anyway, let's continue. Up next, we have Mirage. Where do you think I'm going to put it? I am going to put this in the S tier. We have many very strong Mirage builds right now in the game. The most popular one you're probably going to run into is the Celestial or Condition Mirage build. The reason I put this S tier is because the average player, regardless of skill level, can pick this build up and they're going to have success out in World vs. World roaming, regardless of their skill level. The build more or less plays for you. The other build you're going to see played a lot is the Power Mirage build with Greatsword. That outputs crazy damage. I'll put some clips up probably, but it's all in all a very, very good class. And like I said, whether you're an experienced player or a beginner player, Mirage is just definitely going to be S tier. Up next we have Reaper, and this is a bit of a tough one as well, I'm not going to lie. It is one of those builds that can require a little bit more skill. If we were talking SPVP or something like that, this would definitely be going up to A or maybe even S tier. But in World vs. World with the, you know, the open landscape, this can be a little bit harder to play. Don't get me wrong, it's still very strong, but I think I'm probably gonna opt for B tier here. You don't see that many solo roamers play it. Very good for group roaming. You can put out heaps of condies. If you play Power Reaper, you can do a lot of damage, you know, power damage with it. I think I'm gonna go B tier, honestly. Up next, we've got Herald. Oof. Mate, I didn't realize how tough this tier list is going to be, and I already know there's going to be people who aren't happy with where I'm placing some of these, but Herald is a staple class, I would say. You've got the Power Herald, which is very strong, and there's some players sort of similar to Daredevil who have just played it for so long and they're very good at it. It can output a lot of damage. I'm not going to lie, this is one of the builds I like going back to. I just feel like playing Herald again, and the damage output's really good. I feel like it's gotten better at dealing with condies over time. However, the skill requirement for this build is pretty high, and I think average player, speaking of the average player, I'm not sure if I can warrant putting it in A tier. I'm probably going to have to go for B tier here. I might put it at the, middle of B tier, I think. That's a bit of a tough one, I'm not gonna lie. Feel free to roast me if you disagree. Druid, okay. Druid is not as heavily utilized as I feel like it should be. It is a very strong class. There's a Celestial Druid build, which you'll come across every now and again. And once again, like I was saying earlier, if you're talking about the average player, they can pick this up and be really effective with it pretty quickly. I think I'm gonna go ahead of Hollowsmith actually here. Possibly, yeah. I think I might even go ahead of Berserk and just pop Druid in the A tier. That's going based off of my experience with fighting them. I've actually never gone ahead to play Druid in World vs. World, but I just know from fighting them, they can output a lot of condies and they're extremely hard to kill. Harbinger. This is every roamer's favorite class to fight. Celestial Harbinger is ridiculous. There's even some pretty strong power builds, but this has got to go in S tier. I don't know if I should be ranking them because it's just hard to say. But honestly, I'm just gonna pop it top of S tier. It's so strong. Really oppressive build. Insane condition output. I think you might be picking up a trend that Celestial really makes a lot of these classes strong. But yeah, you can't not put Harbinger up high. Mechanist. If we were talking about me playing Mechanist and my Celestial Mechanist build, which believe it or not is still really busted till this day, if I ever feel like doing a 1v1 where I know I'm gonna win 99% of the time, I put on my Celestial Mechanist, but it doesn't get played much. I honestly think I'm gonna have to look, if like I said, if it was me, I'm gonna put it ahead of A tier, but I'm gonna have to chuck a B tier, probably ahead of yeah. I'm going to pop it ahead of Herald, and I'm going to pop it ahead of Reaper as well. Just because the average Mechanist you come across in World vs. World is often going to be pretty trash. Not hard to fight. Their mech itself is going to be annoying. I don't know, people just don't play the right build with this. And I made that Celestial Mechanist build a couple years back that's still really strong today. Feel free to go back and watch it if you do want a Mechanist build. That's going to be A tier. Dragon Hunter. Ooh. Dragon Hunter definitely has its place in World vs. World roaming because it's good at fighting thieves, which is obviously very common in World vs. World. I don't think it's nearly as oppressive in World vs. World as it can be in SPVP, just because, like I was saying, similar to Reaper, you don't have to fight them in such a small area. If you just learn to dodge their F1, which is most of it. And if they're running longbow, learn to dodge true shot. You can sort of shut down dragon hunters, and of course you're not forced to walk into their traps, especially if you've got some range on you. I'm going to put this C tier, I think. No, you know what? Nah. C tier is too hard. Jesus Christ, I'm not going to be using the C or D tier at all during this video, I think. Oh man, this is going to be such a top end, like, heavy tier list. It's crazy. But I guess that goes to show you that almost every elite spec has a strong build. We're actually in quite an interesting state of the game, because you never really see this where just about every elite specialization has really strong builds. Speaking of which, we're going on to Spectre, which honestly I would usually pop in C tier, but you gotta remember, we've got, like, Power Spectre is not the only build that's out there, which Power Spectre you could argue it's hard to play. But then you've got Celestial Spectre, which definitely pops it in this conversation right here. Really easy to play. If you're a good roamer, Celestial Spectre definitely puts it in the A tier. But we're gonna have to go, if I'm looking at this from a Celestial Spectre point of view, it's gonna mog all these classes. Yeah, it's gonna go front of B tier. All right, finally we've got something I can pop in D tier. Scourge. Dude, I added the C tier, but it's been absolutely useless at this point. But Scourge is just, in comparison to Reaper or Harbinger, there's not really a reason to run Scourge unless you're running like a barrier share build. But like I said, we're talking from a solo roaming perspective. You're not really going to get much out of running Scourge. And speaking of that, D tier, back to back, we've got another one here. Firebrand, which I'm actually going to put below Scourge, I think. Firebrand is good for group roaming, but again, we're talking about if you're out there solo roaming, you're not really going to take Firebrand over, you know, Dragon Hunter or Willbender, which is coming up. Spellbreaker. Okay. This is a build which in the past was really struggling to find its place in World vs. World. But it's starting to creep back up. Honestly, it's definitely B tier. Good players put this in the A tier, but once again, we're talking about the average player. I think I'm going to pop it just in the middle here, B tier. Spellbreaker it's really starting to find its place again with staff. Has good damage output. It does have a higher skill floor. It requires a bit of experience and knowledge of matchups with how you approach the fights. I think B tier is a good place. Untamed. I'm opting to put Untamed in the B tier. It's not like, if we were talking like maybe six plus months ago, it was really strong, but you don't really see it anymore because it's just sort of, I'm not sure if there was actually some nerfs done to it. Like I said, I don't pay too much attention to ranges like balance notes and shit like that, but I've sort of seen it fall off. I'm actually gonna put it in the B tier. Scrapper. Scrapper's gonna go up to the A tier, but I don't know if I put it in front of Hollow. I think before there was some nerfs done to Nade Scrapper, which Nade Scrapper is still really strong, to be completely honest with you. You can still play, but it's not as good as it once was. I don't know how I want to approach this. Honestly, because I'm enjoying Hollow Smith more right now, maybe I'm going to be a little bit biased here and leave Scrapper in A tier, but it's still definitely strong. But I think if we're talking just more well-rounded, I'm going to go with Hollow. Vindicator. Okay, this is going to be high. It's either head of B tier or in the A tier. I honestly think Salvation Vindicator is good enough to put it in A tier. It's got crazy amount of sustain. You've got super short cooldowns on things like your heals. It still puts out really good damage. You've got multiple stun breaks. It's definitely going to be an A tier for me. This build is super easy to play. And like I said, if we're talking about the average player, if you think about them picking up Vindicator as opposed to Herald, with the right training, they're going to be way better at Vindicator than they would be at Herald. They're going to just have a lot more sustain and an easy approach to World vs. World roaming. More consistent cleansers too. Geez, now I'm looking at this and the C tier being empty. I'm starting to think I was a bit too generous with some of these B tier classes, but I'm not gonna reshuffle them now. Virtuoso. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. In the past, I put Virtuoso in S tier. Believe it or not, I actually think it's kind of average now. I'm not sure if it's been nerfed or anything like that, but over time, maybe we've just gotten better at fighting against these. They are very telegraphed. They still do have a lot of access to block and sustain and that sort of thing. But I'm not super impressed by Virtuoso these days. Weaver. Let's think about Fresh Air. Let's think about like sword builds that run Condi, like in tanky gear and shit like that. It's definitely a B tier for me. Weaver has definitely tanked a little bit over the years. Let's not be thinking about, oh, I know a Fresh Air Weaver who's an S tier player, because they're definitely out there, but the average Fresh Air Weaver is pretty garbage, and I'm honestly opting to put this down in the B tier. Now let's talk about Weaver's older brother, Tempest. I honestly think we finally have our first C tier class. Hopefully I'm not making any alley mains mad with this, but there are some players who absolutely love Tempest, and they do actually have some strong builds for it. How often do you really go out into World vs. World, see a Tempest, and worry that they're gonna mess you up? Don't get me wrong, like I said, there are some good Tempest players. There's like the burn Tempest build, you know, put out heaps of burn damage, but yeah, I reckon C tier. We've got our first C tier build. Deadeye. Ooh. Now we're talking some crazy builds. That's definitely going in S tier, ahead of Daredevil, and you might not agree with that, but let me explain. Deadeye has crazy damage output with crazy range, crazy mobility, and in my personal opinion, Deadeye is the biggest celestial counter that Thief has. If we're talking about Thief versus Thief, then Daredevil is the best option for Thief versus Thief, but in terms of Deadeye fighting all these classes, it's definitely better than Daredevil. It has bigger damage output, easier access to stealth, more range damage. It cripples the hell out of its opponents. Yeah, nah. I definitely think Deadeye is a better option overall for World vs. World than Daredevil. Damn, we've got another big one right here. I remember in the past, I put Soul Beast a little bit lower because I said it was a bit of a gimmick build, and people got pretty mad at me. And to be honest, thinking back on it now, rightfully so. I hate this build, bro. I hate this build, and it's S tier. If I could put Daredevil S tier, I definitely have to put Soul Beast S tier, because it's been a staple build since Path of Fire dropped. It has unblockable one-shots at quote 1500 range that ends up being more than 1500 range, and it directly counters these two builds. So yeah, it's definitely S tier in my opinion. We've all had our fair share of getting absolutely gaped by a Soul Beast at one point or another. Willbender is definitely front of A tier. You could warrant putting it in S tier, but like I said, I want to keep S tier like the absolute best options for every player out there. Oh man, it's so hard not putting it in the S tier. You tell me what you think, because if you think I'm wrong in putting it ahead of A tier, you know what? I'm not even going to argue that maybe it can even fit into S tier here. Willbender is just busted. High mobility, a lot of evades. However, what its one downfall is that if you want to play offensive with Willbender, overly offensive, then you actually lose your defensive side of the build, because your virtues are also, you know, a part of playing defensive as well. So if you're doing a lot of chasing and stuff like that, you can sort of kite these out. As long as you survive early on in the fight against the Willbender, you dramatically increase your chances of winning that matchup. Definitely a force to be reckoned with though. And you know what belongs right next to it? Catalyst. 100%. Not a doubt in my mind that Catalyst is currently the best elite specialization you can play on Elementalist. What doesn't Catalyst have right now? You've got the Poison Cata build that you can run with Celestial gear. You've got the Celestial Hammer build, Fresh Air. There's a Dagger Celestial build. Bro, this class has it all. If you're an Elementalist player, don't even call yourself an Elementalist player. Call yourself a Catalyst player, because you don't need the other elite specializations when you've got Catalyst. It is harder to play than Willbender though, so I'm gonna put it below Willbender. And then finally we have Blade Sworn, which I'm going to pop front of B tier. I think it's definitely stronger overall for the average player. Once again, for the average player, I know there's Spellbreakers out there who are absolute gods, but for the average player, Bladesworn is going to be better than Spellbreaker because you have unlimited sustain as well as good damage output on Bladesworn. So much Aegis. If you're running, you know, heal on block, reflect on block, Bladesworn is elite, guys. You could even argue to put it in A tier, but I think this is a little bit more of an even spread. How did I do? You let me know. You let me know your thoughts. If you disagree, tell me why. But that is my video, guys. Hope you all enjoyed it. Like the video, subscribe, comment, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye. If you're struggling with World vs World or PvP, or you're looking to take yourself to the next level, get in contact with me. Details are in the description.